Dr. Rajni Shankar-Brown stands out because she bridges scholarship and activism. She does not only just study social injustice, she works directly in efforts to change policy, support marginalized populations, especially youth and families in housing instability, and reimagine how education can be a vehicle for change. Her use of art and creative methods in teaching reflects her belief that transformation occurs through both structural change and community empowerment. Please help me welcome Dr. Brown.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I love it. The aroma of the soup is sizzling. The energy is alive. What a gift it is to be here together today. And I'm so excited to talk to you today about stone soup. And I've titled the talk today, Empty Pot to Abundant Table. And we're going to reimagine together what our world can look like through care and through collective action. And we heard a great example today of collective action as donations came in and all of you have invested into our community. What a beautiful thing, so thank you for that. So stone soup, if you're not familiar with the story, it is a wonderful story that has been told across cultures, across generations, across history. And one of the most famous versions came out in 1947 by Marcia Brown. And so you see an image of one of the original stories here. It won the Caledon honor. And the story essentially is the same, although across the different cultural versions, you have these changed elements which make the story really fun. One of the beautiful things about the story is you see these two travelers coming into the community. They don't have much. They have stones, however. And with those stones, they're able to encourage the entire community to push aside greed and hoarding and to learn the value of sharing. They're coming into a community with scarcity where there's not a lot. And so everybody's kind of hiding their own vegetables. And yet they encourage them by putting stones into the pot, simmering the stones, where everybody says, well, you know, I do have some carrots. I do have some onions. And as everybody shares one by one, what ends up being a medley of beautiful soup starts to cultivate and build and feed and nourish the entire community. So stone soup is a lovely story. There are so many meanings and layers, and I think at the heart of that, there's a lot to celebrate. The other thing I would share is as you read the story, to take the time to also explore the different cultural versions that exist. It is a really, really nice way to also remember our interconnectedness, our shared humanity, and our global connections. So, some of the different versions, if you're interested in exploring, are these. So this one is Yummy Stone Soup by Alison Milford, illustrations by Joelle Avilo, and it's a beautiful story. This one is set in Africa. Here you have Stone Soup, a version that is told in China, and this is written by John Muff. So again, a lot of different versions of this story. You have Quill Soup, which is really a fun story. Quill Soup, actually, you have a porcupine, and it's an entire whimsical version of Stone Soup. Stone Soup over here by Jess Stockham is also the same story, but you end up having these really wonderful, charismatic animals and characters in it. And then Stone Soup, a familiar folk tale, all ages across the table, is by Christian Golnick and Christelle Golnick. And this story is actually a little more traditional, but the images are quite beautiful. This is probably probably one of my favorite retellings of Stone Soup. This is by Heather Forrest, and it's illustrated by Susan Gebhard. And it has also won a lot of awards, including for the illustrations. And one of the things that I would say is there are so many lessons and themes that come out of the story of Stone Soup. We could sit here and unpack the rest of the year. That is one of the beauties of children's stories. We think it's for children, but it's really for all ages. And this is a story that is an example of that. One of the biggest themes for me that I take out of it every time I read this story, whether it's reading to when they were small to now big, I still read to them, is care is not transactional, but it is relational. It is not transactional, it is relational. Now, it doesn't mean, I had a very philosophical discussion with Valen, right? We like to go head on head with different discussions. And we talked about how transactions are also important in community. But what happens is when we prioritize transaction and forget the relational, often harms end up happening. We lose sight of the very humanity that needs to be rooted in the work of equity and justice. And so again, focusing on the relational, being intentional in our communities to pause, to make time to listen deeply to each other's stories, to say hello, to be present. I love when you came up, you spoke about you're working to seek to build that deeper community now in Jacksonville where you live. And that is essential because community, in essence, it's a verb. It doesn't just happen. We have to be intentional to make space, to make place both physically but also in our hearts and minds, to be open to building that. And Stone Soup offers all of these rich, lovely, delightful lessons. The other thing I would share is we know that resourcefulness and abundance is something that we can intentionally choose as communities over cooperate. When we cooperate, we can choose that over greed and fear and divisiveness. And it is actually central. If you look at the disparities that are growing across the landscape of the United States, growing in our state, growing across in our local communities, what we start to see is, again, it is the intentional choice we have to commit and recommit to say we are going to choose cooperation, we are going to choose love, and we're going to push aside, dismantle, actively organize against greed, fear, hate. Even as we think about scarcity mentalities, right now, that is quite abundant because we do have in many communities scarcity. But that scarcity also has to be paired with the realization that overall, we are far from scarcity. In our nation, we have more than enough wealth and resources where everyone should have access to fundamental human rights. Access to food, access to safe, accessible, affordable housing, access to a quality education, access to books, even censorship that is happening now. So as we root and grow in our communities, let us center love. Let us center it with intention and passion and tireless efforts that require all of us to work together. So I think reading and rereading this story, there's a lot of modern connections we can make as well. So if you look at the folk tale, one of the things that comes to mind is right now as we gather, and I think, Linda, you said it well, that while we give gratitude and celebrate for what we have, also balancing that with the recognition of so many not having. And that number is growing. Right now, what happened with governmental shutdowns, disruptions to SNAP's benefits, it is very real where many families, children, youth, elders over the age of 65 have no access to food, are struggling, literally not knowing where they're going to get their next meal. And when we're hungry, it is hard to do anything. It is hard to learn. It is hard to be. It is hard to do anything. And when you think about not just survival and surviving, but the ability to thrive and thriving as a community, nourishment, food, the physiological nourishments, and then the social emotional nourishments are essential. And so there's a lot we can learn from this story that I think we can wrestle with, we can contemplate, but we can also be reminded to use our own agency, our own resources, even when they're small, to share out, to ripple, to build healthier, more just, more loving communities. And so I also want to make a connection. I believe, Tim, last week you did a talk, and Tim's talk was on James Adams, right? And when you think about the 5 smooth stones of religious liberalism, just a connection for those who were at the talk last week to tonight as we build the soup together, a revelation is ongoing. We must stay open to new wisdom in building just communities. Relationships matter. They matter. And again, relationships are often actually hard work and heart work because we have to build them. We have to grow them. We have to sustain them. And relationships, the sacred, can emerge as we engage in shared responsibility. There's a spirituality, a divine, when people come together and they recognize the humanity that is in all of us. Justice is collaborative. We are called into cooperative power, not coercive power. Quite a difference there. When you look at a lot of the wrong that is happening in our world today, there is a lot of abuse of power. There is a lot of coercive power. How do we start to change that into cooperative, power sharing, shared allocations of power, redistribution of resources to become equitable, knowing that when one does better, we all do better. That when we share, it doesn't mean less for us. It means more for the whole community, and the community is healthier. Communities must self-correct. Collective reflection prevents stagnation and inequity. I love so many things about the community here. One of the things that I love is that you are all not afraid to dive right into heavy topics. Not afraid to ask critical questions. Not afraid to learn and explore, even when certain topics may be completely unfamiliar. And that is beautiful because it moves us from that stagnation. It starts to get us to recognize inequities, but also to come up with solutions on how we can address and prevent inequities. And of course, hope is active. It is active. Transformation requires courageous participation from you, me, we, the collective, we, the people, in order to have that transformational change in our world. And hope, I always go back and have to honor my mentor, Congressman John Lewis, who would speak of hope as being essential to justice. Because when we lose sight of hope, when we don't hold on to it, steadfast and in our heart, that's when the march sometimes starts to slow down and even die out. So we've got to keep hope alive in this work, even as daunting and heavy as the problems are. And that can be quite a challenge. Not always easy, but still imperative to the work of justice. So in Stone Soup, one of the lessons, the many multitudes of lessons that I love that emerges, is this realization that we are able to co-create stronger, co-create in more beautiful ways when we work together, when we come together to co-create. If just those 2 travelers sat there with the 2 stones in their water, that soup wasn't going to taste very good. But as everybody came and co-created the vision, adding each element, each vegetable, each root that has grown, we end up with something flavorful, delicious, healthy, something that is both healthy tonic and fuel for spirit, body, mind. And so again, as we exist in our own communities, small and big, let us not forget the importance of co-creation. And even the beautiful sounds. I think about music. How even a symphony takes so many instruments to come together to produce the magnificent sound that comes out. And even as we all sang together, we got some praise from a musician this morning that we sounded okay, right? And together as we sang, our voices lifted. They filled the space with tangible energy. Some other big themes that I take away from Stone Soup, and again, there's so many themes. I encourage everyone to go read, and you can even watch videos. Even there are some fun videos, even children's shows that have taken characters and made videos based on this story. And it's really, you can get into a rabbit hole. But it's really fun to see all the versions that exist. Caring communities nourish people physically, emotionally, spiritually. And I also would add cognitively. An example of this. Small acts of kindness and resource sharing can ripple outward into systemic change. This is something that is sometimes hard for us to have faith in when we might not see the bigger outcome. And I think about this, I often get this question from my students. You know, if I can take this small action, is it even doing any good in the face of all this that is going on? What good does that do? And I always remind my students that anytime we talk about systemic change, transformative change, it started with small movements that were able to ripple out and grow and even interconnect. And in fact, we couldn't have the systemic change and the macro level changes if people weren't also working to sustain at the micro level. So we need it. Those efforts matter. They make a difference. And those ripples, let us not forget, can become huge waves of social change. Co-creating, such as making and sharing soup, acts as a ritual of connection and belonging. And this is across cultures. If you think about indigenous cultures or tribal nations, all of their rooted teachings often talk about this idea of co-creation, even not just with each other as humans, but even with planet. As we are with the earth, as we garden, as we work together with living creatures, as we work to honor even sun and the nourishment that comes back and forth with energy exchanges, there is this beautiful, magical act of co-creation that is unfolding. So to honor that, and to remember that even we have a Sanskrit concept called anandana, and it is the sacred sharing of food. And we are told in our culture, when you share food, when you feed somebody, both feed them physically, but also feed them socially, emotionally, spiritually, that in fact, there is so much wealth that is distributed in a million multitudes of ways, and that you walk away also more nourished. There's blessings there. And so let's think about that. As we're walking through the grocery store or down the street, maybe it's sharing the smile, and there's a social emotional connection. Maybe it's inviting somebody to dinner and feeding them and sharing in food. The more that we share, and we learned this even as kids, right? Ramila, when she was in kindergarten, one of the first things she did a poster design. Mr. Spears was your kindergarten teacher. I was just thinking, he was a really funny man, just a side story. Mr. Spears, her teacher, was completely bald, and he would glue googly eyes on the back of his head. So when he was up on the board or doing anything, and the kids really thought, like, oh, you can see it. So, very, very fun man. Mr. Spears is a fun man. He still teaches at your old elementary school, in fact. But one of the first lessons they learned was caring is sharing. And sharing is caring. a central principle we teach to kids, but as adults, as a society, we somehow forget. So this is a mural in Miami. So if you go to Miami, there's so many beautiful murals you can see. And this one caught my attention when I was there recently. I was doing some work down there. We were actually protesting food bans, where food sharing, if you look at the horrific legislation, not only are we criminalizing people who are unhoused and experiencing homelessness and don't have access to food, we are also starting to give tickets and fines through legislation to faith organizations, community organizations who come out into the community to share food. How ridiculous is that? But this mural caught my eye, and I love it. You see these kind of diverse hands growing seed to plant, and the idea of food. And in fact, it is called Workers' Heroes was the name of the mural. And it was a homage to our farmers, but also a reminder of sharing. What happens when we share and we grow for the betterment of all. I am filled with hope as I sit here. We recently at UCF, if you know, this program aligns perfect because right now we are in the week of Hunger and Homelessness Awareness Week around the nation. And so many times people don't know, but this was started by the National Coalition for the Homeless, along with student homeless coalitions. And it is a time where even we galvanize and organize and tell communities that not just this time of year, but to build sustainability so we're giving and sharing and addressing systemic issues in all sorts of ways all year long. And so at UCF, we recently held our hunger banquet. And so Ramila got to be a part of it, and Amma is there doing namaste in her green. I was really excited she came. Part of it is we did a simulation. We had the students actually have different scenarios that they came into. And they had to keep and budget, and real world things happened. And for so many of them, their eyes just grew and grew and grew, thinking about how hard it is to just sustain yourself, especially as we live where there is a severe lack of affordable housing, a lack of a fair living wage, compounded public health challenges, a lot of challenges that are real. And yet, in the midst of that, this is hope. These young people, this was not a class, this was not anything for credit, this was late on a weeknight, and these students showed up, and there was more. This was just at the very, very end after cleanup what we got, and they packed the room. And to me, that was a reminder of good. That we have people who do care, including our young people, who show up. And this space, every Sunday, the goodness that all of you plant and grow and the roots, it is felt. I am so grateful because it is so visible in this community. So thank you. Thank you for being you and what you do, and thank you, right? Even our young people showing up. And for a lot, they're carrying the heaviness of our world today. There's a lot of weight on their shoulders and their hearts, like all of us. But I mean, our planet, it's a mess. From climate change to quite tangibly our social structures. So stone soup. While we're sharing and caring over soup, I ask us to take these same lessons from the story and from today into our everyday lives. Let us continue to advocate and share, making sure that everybody has a piece of the pot when it comes to housing. Let us make sure that we are showing up in ways including sharing diverse voices and literature, especially as we sit at a time where our state is #1 with banned books, surpassing Texas. It is shameful. So this holiday season, just like we share our vegetables, share some banned books. Get into good trouble. And think about this holiday season, doing some simple acts of joy and kindness. So there was a movement that has kind of ebbed and flowed over the years with the rocks, kindness rocks. I don't know if anybody's ever experienced kindness rocks, but we've had this kind of movement in various communities around the U.S. where every multi-generation will just take some time to paint stones, and then they leave them in places all over. You kind of drop them like fairies, right? Leaving these sprinkles, and somebody finds it and picks it up. And that message might be the thing that someone needed on that day. So what a beautiful thing. If you're bored, if you're looking for something to do as a family or as a group, right? Maybe even here, we organize a night where we paint some rocks, right? And then drop them, put them in the community, spread that joy. So I love it. So this one, you can see the literal be kind. And here's a stone saying, give thanks. So this, growing up, we are a big board game family. We love games. And I had bought this cooperative learning game for Ramila when she was young, and it was very hard to find cooperative learning games. So what I mean by that is the majority of board games are competitive, where you have one winner. And the goal, in fact, which, we do enjoy times that we get pretty, I'm not gonna lie, right? I am the Monopoly champion. Everybody has that, right? But the idea of the cooperative learning games is beautiful because not one person wins. In order to win, we have to work together strategically. And so we all win, or we all don't. And I think there's a great lesson to that. And so I looked very hard when Ramila was young to find these, and actually one of the first cooperative learning games I got her when she was young was Stone Soup, a game that I just love, and it's based off the story. And so this is such a fun game. It's really all ages. It's a quick game. Little kids can play it, but it's still fun for adults too. And it doesn't take forever like Monopoly. So it's a really fun game. And so I wanted to share with you all today. I ordered this game for your congregation. And so, yes, so unfortunately it didn't come on time. I'm waiting on the shipment. But the next time I see you all, I'm giving you the board game. So you can keep it here, and you all have such beautiful places to sit. And so, yeah, have some fun. Play Stone Soup. So as we end today, I again am taken back to the words of Margaret Mead, American cultural anthropologist who writes and speaks of collective caring. And her words never doubt that a small group of committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it is the only thing that ever has. Resonates. And when you look at Stone Soup, they turned and took an empty pot and made something beautiful as citizens and a small group. All of us have the opportunity to do this every single day. So let us continue to make delicious, nourishing soup in our lives and to warm each other with humanity and love. Namaste. Closing words now or later? Later. Okay, I have a slide for it, so. So I don't know if that's going to mess you up. Okay.